Hi everybody, today we're working on a 2013 Mini Cooper S John Cooper Works GP, also known as the GP2. Today we'll be replacing the front brakes. The GP2 has an awesome giant Brembo 6-piston caliper, which is actually cross-referenced and is installed also on the 2007, I believe, to 2013 BMW 135i. Same front brakes. So this procedure will be the same for both the BMW 135i and the John Cooper Works GP2. The Mini GP2 was a special variant of the Mini Cooper that was released in 2013. Only 500 models were released in North America. 2,000 copies were made worldwide. And it's a special motorsport variant, kind of like a M car for the BMWs. It has reduced weight, no back seat, better suspension, and other bits like that. And they're starting to go up in value. So the first thing we got to do is take the wheel off. We've also put wheel studs on this car instead of the standard BMW Mini bolts. It just makes it easier to put the wheel back on. So the pads are held in place by these Torx 40 bolts with slider. They're basically slider pins. That's also a bolt. So we remove these, which allow the pads to slide backward and forward, but we do need to remove the caliper completely to get the pads out, and that's done by these 10mm Allen fasteners, one at the top and one at the bottom. It's kind of easy to round out a Torx fastener, so you want to make sure that the bit is all the way in. Sometimes it's nice to just give it a tap to make sure. And personally, I like to use impact tools to get them out. You can use regular tools as well. You just have to be extra careful that it doesn't slip and strip out the head of the fastener. So whenever I use an impact tool on a hex or a Torx, I always push in as hard as I can and then hope it knocks it out without the tool riding up, camming out, and coming out and stripping the bolt. So if you take due care, it'll come out with no drama. Same thing. We'll do the inside ones. Same thing, I'm going to pull in and make sure it doesn't cam out on me. So that one's a little tight. I'm going to cheat and use a more powerful tool. And it comes right out. Alright, next we're going to take off the two upper and lower 10mm Allen fasteners. These are on there pretty tight. I'm going to hold on to the system here so it doesn't fall down. Oh yeah, I forgot this card, the set screw. There's no hole for these things here, so the rotor came off together, so I'm just going to wiggle it back a little bit, let it sit there for a second. Now we're going to push the pistons back, and so I'm just going to get a screwdriver in here and just kind of gently press. It only takes a few pounds of force. I'm just going to gently press until I see a little gap appearing, and then I'm going to stick a screwdriver in the gap and pry towards the brake pad, not towards the rotor. That way we're not going to scratch the surface of the rotor. And same thing on the other side. These pads are actually pretty new, so there's not much caliper retraction that we need to do. We're just changing for a different pad for different driving conditions. But I just want to push them in now. Once we've done that, we can lift the caliper and the pads off, and then place them up on top where we can work on the system. Once you've done that, the pads, you just can go ahead and lift them out. If you're going to be reusing the pads, it's a good idea to grab a magic marker or something and mark left of the car, right side of the car, and I like to draw an arrow pointing in the direction of rotation, so that way I can put them back in the same orientation, because for this car the pads can be installed either way. So I'm going to mark this is the left side of the car and the pads go in that direction. So I'm going to inspect the the pistons while we got the system apart. These are made out of aluminum, I believe, and with high temperature application, I have seen where these start to crumble with heat, so it's a good idea to check and make sure they look good. All right, so we'll go ahead and put the new pads in. These are actually old pads. These are street pads. We're taking off the track pads. And you simply just drop them in. Make sure to put the backing side facing out. Then I'm going to grab one of the bolts, get it ready, and then I'll lift the whole system again and plop them in. Sometimes it's a little tight if they're brand new pads, and if that happens, you can kind of camber over the system and give it a little push like that, and you can pry the pistons out a little bit more if they're not out as far as you need them to be. But once you get it in there, just get your bolt ready. Get a couple threads started and then it'll stay there. Get the other bolt. Just start it by hand. Always start bolts by hand before you crank them down to avoid cross threading. And I'm just gonna make sure the pads are in there nice and they're not bound up on anything. And then I'll run down these bolts. Finish tightening by hand. Don't ask me what the torque value is, I have no idea. About this much. Basically as much strength as you got. It's pretty close to what you would torque down a wheel bolt. All right, now we'll put the caliper slide bolts back in. And what I'll do is I'll push in on the pad and line up the hole in the pad so that I can get the bolt to go through the hole and then put it in gently. I'll do the same on the bottom. Tighten with a hand tool. About that tight is fine. The back ones, I can't reach in and touch the pad directly, so I'll use a screwdriver and just gently pull forward. And then you can see it's going through here. I know it's captive. And I'll do the same on the bottom. Just gently pull forward. So that's pretty much it. It's actually pretty easy to replace the pads on one of these calipers. So just make sure you don't strip out any bolts or anything like that. Just be sure when you start out the car, you will need to press the brake pedal a few times to take up this play so you don't crash into something when you back the car out of the garage. And if it's a new system, you're going to want to bed the brakes in, do a bunch of very rapid stops, get some heat into the system and transfer some of the pad material onto the rotors. And also check the brake fluid level, because when you push the pads in, it tends to cause the level to rise as it goes back into the reservoir, and you may need to siphon some of that out. All right, and then last we'll go up on top here. Check the brake reservoir. Make sure it's not overfilled, because sometimes when you push back it will be. On the Mini Cooper, if it's just touching the little what do you call this, mesh screen here, that's full, so it's perfectly fine now. This car, we probably topped it off when the pads were last changed. So that's pretty much all there is to it. That's how you replace the pads on a GP2 Mini Cooper or on a 135i. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.